Welcome to Cats for Sleep. Tonight, we're going to explore a quiet and fascinating process. How a small, solitary predator slowly moved closer to human life. How cats went from living entirely on their own terms to becoming something softer, something familiar. This change did not happen through training or directive. It unfolded over many years, through shared spaces, repeated nights, and gentle proximity. Nothing dramatic happens all at once. The story moves the way cats themselves tend to move through the world. Slowly, carefully, by choice. Before cats were companions, before they shared our homes and routines, they already existed as complete beings. They did not arrive unfinished. They did not arrive waiting to be shaped. They arrived balanced. If you're settling into rest, feel free to get comfortable now. And if you enjoy these long, gentle explorations, you're welcome to subscribe and join us again on future nights. You can also leave a comment sharing where you're listening from tonight. It helps other cat lovers find their way here too. Long before humans noticed them, cats lived as small, precise hunters. They occupied a narrow space in the natural world, one that favored efficiency over strength. They were neither large nor imposing. They relied on timing, patience, and stillness. A cat's body reflects this balance clearly. Flexible spine, light frame, quiet paws. Every movement conserves energy. Nothing is wasted. Even today, when a cat pauses in the middle of a room, standing perfectly still, you're seeing something ancient. That pause is not hesitation. It's awareness settling into place. Cats evolved to wait. Their senses are tuned for subtle shifts. A small sound beneath grass, a vibration along the ground, a flicker of movement at the edge of sight. They do not need constant action. They thrive in moments between motion. This kind of hunting doesn't reward speed alone. It rewards restraint. From the beginning, cats learned how to remain quiet inside their own bodies. Their breathing slows naturally when they rest. Their muscles soften without losing readiness. Their mind stays alert without urgency. This internal calm is not something they learned later. It was always there. Unlike animals that rely on groups to survive, early cats lived mostly alone. They did not depend on social hierarchy. They did not need constant communication. Their lives followed simple rhythms: rest, observe, move, eat, return to stillness. Solitude did not weaken them. It stabilized them. Because of this, cats never needed reassurance from others to feel secure. Their sense of safety came from familiarity with place, pattern, and timing. A known path, a known shelter, a predictable cycle of night and day. This self-contained way of living is important to understand. It explains why cats did not seek humans out emotionally at first. They had no gap to fill. They already knew how to be alone without distress. Their bodies also reflect this independence. Cats can regulate their energy with remarkable efficiency. They sleep deeply when rest is available. They wake quickly when attention is needed. There is no internal conflict between rest and readiness. This balance allowed cats to survive in changing environments without needing to adapt socially. They adjusted by watching, by waiting, by choosing when to act. In this early stage of the story, humans are not present yet. There is no interaction to explain. Only a small predator moving through grasses and stone, guided by instinct refined over countless generations. Cats did not evolve to dominate landscapes. They evolved to fit into narrow ecological spaces with precision. They took what they needed. They left very little behind. That light footprint mattered later. Because cats were already comfortable existing alongside other creatures without confrontation, they were capable of sharing space when humans eventually arrived. They did not need ownership. They did not require control. They only needed their rhythms to remain undisturbed. As you rest now, it may help to imagine one of these early cats at dusk. The air cooling, the ground holding warmth from the day, the cat pausing, ears turning slightly, eyes half-lidded yet attentive. Nothing presses forward, nothing demands attention. This is where the story begins, with a creature already at ease in the world, already balanced between motion and rest, already complete. And as we continue, you'll see that this quiet completeness is exactly what allowed cats to become something more later on. Not by changing who they were, but by staying close to it. For now, there's nothing to do but rest with that image. A small hunter, perfectly balanced. Before cats shared space with people, their lives unfolded quietly, without witnesses. No one tracked their movements. No one recorded their habits. They lived without being observed, and that shaped them in important ways. Early cats moved through landscapes that asked very little of them beyond awareness. They did not build shelters that lasted generations. They did not store food for future seasons. Their survival depended on presence rather than preparation. A cat's territory formed naturally around familiarity. Paths repeated. Hiding places became known. Hunting grounds revealed themselves through use rather than planning. This kind of life rewarded memory of place, where the ground dips slightly, where stones hold warmth after sunset, where prey tends to pass at certain hours. Cats learned the land through repetition. Their mind absorbed patterns without effort. Each night reinforced what the last one taught. Because they lived alone, communication was minimal. There was no need for constant signaling, no group coordination, no shared responsibility. Most interactions between cats were brief and purposeful. A moment of assessment, a decision made quickly, then separation again. Distance was comfortable. This solitary rhythm created emotional self-sufficiency. Cats did not rely on reassurance from others to feel settled. Their internal state followed external conditions. Quiet surroundings invited rest. Movement invited attention. There was no conflict between these states. They flowed into one another naturally. Rest itself held an important role. Cats slept deeply and often. Sleep restored the body and sharpened awareness. There was no urgency to remain active when nothing required action. This frequent rest gave cats flexibility. They could respond quickly when needed. They could also remain still for long stretches without discomfort. Stillness became a skill. In this early world, cats existed within food webs that balanced themselves. Small prey species flourished. Predators took only what sustained them. The landscape adjusted gradually. Cats never needed to expand aggressively. They occupied a narrow ecological role with precision. Their presence influenced the environment subtly, rather than dramatically. Because of this, cats rarely disrupted the systems they lived within. They adapted to what already existed. They blended rather than reshaped. Their senses supported this way of life. Hearing extended into higher frequencies. Vision favored low light. Whiskers mapped space through touch. These tools allowed cats to navigate complexity without force. They did not push against the world. They read it. A cat could wait near a burrow for long periods without strain. Breathing slowed, muscles softened, awareness stayed present. This balance between relaxation and readiness defined their survival strategy. Energy conservation mattered as much as action. Movement occurred only when timing felt right. Because early cats depended on timing rather than pursuit, patience became embedded in their behavior. They learned to let moments arrive rather than chase them. This approach to life shaped how cats related to everything around them. They did not impose themselves. They responded. Weather shifts mattered. Seasonal changes altered routines. Cats adjusted quietly. When resources became scarce, they moved on. When abundance returned, they settled again. There was no attachment to place beyond usefulness and comfort. This flexibility helped cats endure environmental change over long spans of time. They did not resist change emotionally. They observed it. Before humans entered the picture, cats had no concept of companionship. They did not seek connection for comfort. Their sense of safety lived inside their own bodies and surroundings. That inner steadiness meant cats did not experience loneliness in the way social animals might. Being alone felt natural. Being alert felt sufficient. This is important to hold gently as we continue the story. Cats did not join humans because they lacked something. They joined because circumstances allowed overlap. Their independence made that overlap possible. A creature already at ease with solitude does not panic when sharing space. It assesses. It observes. It decides. As night settles wherever you are listening, you might notice something familiar in this rhythm. The way your own attention drifts when nothing demands it. The comfort of simply being present. Cats lived this way long before companionship entered the story. They rested when rest was available. They watched when watching mattered. Nothing needed explanation. This was life before humans watched. A quiet existence shaped by timing, familiarity, and rest. And it is from this calm foundation that everything else unfolds. Long before cats and humans shared space, the landscapes themselves were changing in subtle ways. Grasses spread across open ground. Seeds matured and fell in repeating cycles. Small animals learned where food returned year after year. Rodents thrived in these conditions. They followed abundance closely. Where grains grew densely, mice and rats appeared in greater numbers. They adapted quickly, building nests near reliable sources of nourishment. This expansion happened gradually. No single season caused it. Patterns formed over generations. The natural world favors repetition. When food returns to the same places, life gathers there. Cats notice this shift without effort. Their senses tune naturally toward movement and sound. Where rodents multiplied, cats found consistent opportunity. They did not need to change their behavior. They simply followed the rhythms already unfolding. This period mattered deeply, even though it unfolded quietly. The presence of rodents created stable hunting grounds. Stability rewarded patience. Patience matched the cat's existing nature. In these environments, cats no longer needed to travel as far to find food. They could remain close to known paths. They could rest longer between hunts. Energy conservation became easier. This abundance did not create excess. It created balance. Rodents reproduce quickly. Their numbers rise and fall in waves. Cats responded instinctively, keeping populations within natural limits. This interaction required no awareness from either side. It unfolded as part of the landscape itself. The world of grain and small prey offered predictability. Predictability invited familiarity. Familiarity invited staying. This was the first quiet condition that made long-term presence possible. At the same time, early human communities were beginning to shape these same environments. They cleared land gently. They encouraged certain plants to grow. They stored seeds for future seasons. None of this was intended for cats. Yet it altered the land in ways cats could read. Grain storage created concentrated food sources. Rodents gathered. Cats followed. This overlap was environmental rather than intentional. Humans and cats responded to the same conditions from different directions. One sought nourishment through cultivation, the other through observation and timing. The result was shared space. Cats approaching these areas did not encounter resistance. Their presence aligned naturally with the flow of events. They reduced rodent pressure without disrupting daily human activity. Their movements remained mostly unseen. At night, when human activity slowed, cats moved freely. They navigated storage areas quietly. They rested nearby, often unseen. This rhythm suited both species. Cats did not need to enter homes. They remained at the edges. Edges offered warmth, shelter, and access without confinement. Edges are important places in nature. They allow observation without immersion. They offer safety alongside opportunity. Cats are creatures of edges. In these early shared environments, cats refined a skill that would matter later. They learned how to live near another species without demanding interaction. They learned how to remain present without interference. Their mind tracked human movement patterns naturally. When activity peaked, when it slowed, when silence returned. This awareness allowed cats to synchronize without attachment. Rodents, meanwhile, continued to follow grain. Their cycles remained predictable. Cats adapted effortlessly. Over time, these areas became reliable habitats. Cats returned night after night. Generations grew accustomed to the presence of structures, scents, and sounds associated with humans. This familiarity shaped behavior gently. Cats resting near human settlements experienced fewer threats from larger predators. Shelter increased survival. Kittens born nearby encountered human presence early in life. None of this required intention. It unfolded as consequence. The world of rodents and grain offered cats something valuable: consistency. Consistency allowed cats to remain without vigilance becoming strain. They could relax into patterns. They could rest deeply between hunts. This relaxation mattered. When an animal rests well, its nervous system settles. Awareness remains intact without tension. Responses soften. Cats living in these environments began to carry that softness forward. They still hunted. They still moved quietly. Their instincts remained unchanged. Yet the environment invited calm. As you listen now, you might imagine these early nights. Stored grain resting in silence. Rodents stirring softly beneath wood and stone. A cat waiting nearby, breathing slow, body still. No urgency exists in this moment, only presence. This shared world formed the foundation for everything that followed. Cats did not enter human history through invitation or capture. They arrived through alignment. When we look at modern cats, we are still looking at their beginnings. Their bodies have changed very little over time. Their movements remain familiar. Their instincts remain intact. This continuity matters. The early cats that lingered near grain stores and quiet human edges were closely related to the African wildcat, known today as Felis sylvestris libica. This animal still exists. It still hunts alone. It still favors open landscapes with scattered cover. It still moves with the same measured grace we recognize in our homes today. When you watch a cat stretch, stalk a toy, or pause mid-step, you are seeing behavior that predates human settlement. These movements were not learned from us. They were carried forward. Unlike many animals that underwent dramatic physical change alongside humans, cats remained largely the same. Their faces stayed narrow. Their bodies stayed light. Their claws stayed sharp. This tells us something important. Cats were not reshaped to fit human needs. They fit because they already could. Early wildcats did not rely on group cooperation. They did not need hierarchy or instruction. They succeeded through observation and timing. These traits transferred seamlessly into shared environments. When cats approached human spaces, they did so without confusion. They recognized patterns. They adjusted their movement. They maintained distance when needed. Their survival did not require emotional bonding. It required awareness. Because their bodies and instincts were already suited for edge living. Cats did not experience pressure to change. They did not need to become something new in order to remain. This absence of pressure preserved their nature. Archaeological evidence supports this quiet continuity. Early remains of cats found near human settlements show minimal physical divergence from their wild counterparts. Bone structure, size, dental patterns all remain familiar. Even behavior leaves traces. Modern cats still display hunting sequences identical to those observed in wildcats today. The pause before movement, the slow advance, the sudden stillness. These patterns remain unbroken. This continuity helps explain why cats never fully surrendered their independence. Their evolutionary path did not require submission or transformation. They adapted through proximity rather than alteration. When cats rested near human shelters, they carried their ancestral calm with them. They slept deeply when safe. They woke quickly when necessary. This ability to shift between rest and readiness allowed them to thrive in environments shaped by another species without stress. Humans, meanwhile, learned to recognize this presence without demanding interaction. Cats did not beg for attention. They did not seek approval. They existed nearby, quietly contributing without ceremony. Over time, familiarity softened perception. What once appeared as a shadow became recognized as a presence. What once moved unnoticed became expected. The cat remained the same. This stability likely encouraged trust without forcing it. Humans observed cats over long periods. They noticed reliability. They noticed calm. Cats did not disrupt daily life. They did not require care. They simply remained. Because cats stayed so close to their original form, they never lost their ability to leave. They could wander. They could return. They retained choice. Choice underlies trust. When a cat chooses to remain nearby, that decision carries weight. It reflects comfort rather than obligation, presence rather than dependence. This dynamic continues today. A cat sitting across the room mirrors the same stance held by its ancestor at the edge of a field. Alert yet relaxed, present yet unattached. Their eyes still track movement carefully. Their ears still rotate independently. Their bodies still align naturally with the world around them. Nothing about this behavior was taught. It was inherited. As you rest now, you might picture this lineage stretching quietly across time. A wildcat pausing near tall grass, another resting near stored grain, another curled at the edge of a hearth, another sleeping beside a window. The shape remains the same. The posture remains the same. The calm remains the same. This unbroken thread explains why cats feel both familiar and distant. They never crossed fully into dependence. They remained themselves. And because they did, they could join human spaces without losing balance. This section of the story does not mark a change. It reveals continuity. Cats did not become something else in order to be near us. They carried their ancient form forward. And in doing so, they brought the quiet stability of a small, self-contained predator into the shared spaces of human life. That presence continues softly, even now. Over time, human life began to change. Groups that once moved frequently started to remain in place longer. Temporary shelters became repeated shelters. Paths became familiar. This shift did not happen suddenly. It unfolded slowly across generations, shaped by seasons and success. Where food could be grown and stored, people stayed. Early settlements formed around stability, water sources, fertile ground, places where effort returned reward. As humans remained, their environments changed gently. Land was cleared in small areas. Plants were encouraged to grow. Structures appeared that softened the edges of daily life. These changes altered the landscape in subtle but meaningful ways. Food no longer existed only in wild cycles. It gathered. It waited. It returned each year to the same places. Storage mattered. Seeds and grains were kept safe from weather and loss. Containers, pits, and simple buildings became part of the land. This concentration of nourishment reshaped animal behavior. Rodents adapted quickly. They followed consistency. They learned where food remained available beyond a single season. The presence of rodents grew more noticeable. Their paths crossed human spaces regularly. They nested nearby. They moved quietly at night. Humans noticed the impact of rodents long before they noticed cats. Grain disappeared. Stores were disturbed. Small sounds filled the dark hours. Yet these conditions did not invite forceful solutions. They invited balance. Cats approached these spaces naturally. They were already accustomed to following prey. The new environment offered familiarity rather than confusion. For a cat, early settlements presented clear signals. Shelter clustered together. Heat lingered longer. Movement followed predictable patterns. These signals mattered. Cats did not see human structures as barriers. They saw edges. Walls offered cover. Roofs offered shade. Discarded materials offered warmth. Edges again became central. Cats positioned themselves near human activity without entering it fully. They rested where noise softened. They watched where light faded. Their presence blended into the background. Humans did not invite cats in. They allowed them to remain. This allowance is important. It reflects the nature of the relationship forming. Cats were tolerated because they caused no disruption. They did not threaten livestock. They did not demand food. They moved quietly. Their contribution unfolded without announcement. Rodent numbers stabilized. Stores suffered less loss. Night disturbances eased. Nothing needed explanation. Over time, cats became part of the expected environment. Their silhouettes appeared at dusk. Their movements traced familiar paths. Their absence would have felt unusual. This familiarity developed slowly. Trust formed through repetition rather than interaction. Humans observed cats over long spans of time. Cats observed humans in return. Neither species rushed toward closeness. Early settlements offered something rare in the natural world: consistency. Consistency allowed cats to relax without losing vigilance. They learned when human activity peaked. They learned when quiet returned. This knowledge shaped behavior gently. Cats adjusted their movements to avoid disruption. They moved when unnoticed. They rested when safe. Their mind absorbed patterns effortlessly. As generations passed, kittens born near settlements encountered human presence early. Sounds of voices, light from fires, scents carried by daily life. These exposures shaped comfort without forcing familiarity. Cats did not imprint emotionally. They acclimated. This distinction matters. Cats remained cautious. They retained distance. They preserved choice. Yet fear softened. Early human settlements did not tame cats. They created conditions where cats could remain without stress. Shelter reduced exposure. Rodent abundance reduced hunting strain. Predictability reduced vigilance. Together, these elements supported calm. As you rest now, imagine one of these early nights. A small settlement resting under open sky. Grain stored quietly nearby. A cat settled at the edge of light, half hidden, fully aware. No one is watching closely. No one is interfering. The cat stays because staying feels safe. The humans sleep because the night feels quieter. This is how proximity begins. Without agreement, without ownership, without intention. Early human settlements did not change cats. They gave cats a place where being themselves worked. And that quiet compatibility set the stage for everything that followed. Cats did not arrive at human settlements with curiosity about people. They arrived with attention tuned to patterns. Movement changed near these new places. Sounds repeated themselves. Smells gathered and lingered. The land behaved differently. For a cat, this difference mattered. Where humans stayed, rodents stayed too. Their paths became regular. Their nesting sites returned night after night. Their activity followed predictable hours. Cats noticed this quickly. They always had. Opportunity does not announce itself to a cat. It reveals itself through consistency. A rustle at the same time each evening. Footsteps that quiet after sunset. Light that fades slowly rather than disappearing all at once. These signals told a clear story. Hunting near human settlements required less travel, less searching, less uncertainty. Cats could remain close to known shelter and still meet their needs. This efficiency mattered deeply. Energy saved is safety earned. Rather than roaming widely, cats began to circle smaller areas. They learned the boundaries of these new spaces. They mapped them through repetition. This mapping happened without stress. Cats were not intruding. They were adapting. Early settlements offered warmth that lasted through the night. Fires left behind heat in stone and earth. Structures blocked wind. Sheltered corners softened temperature swings. Cats gravitated toward these conditions naturally. Warmth supports rest. Rest supports alertness. A cat that rests well hunts well. None of this required interaction with humans. Cats moved when people slept. They paused when people stirred. They remained unseen more often than seen. This invisibility preserved comfort. Cats did not need permission to stay. They only needed absence of threat. Humans, for their part, noticed fewer rodents. Stores remained intact more often. The night felt quieter. This outcome reinforced tolerance. Over time, tolerance became expectation. Cats continued to follow opportunity rather than people. Their focus stayed grounded in environment rather than relationship. They adjusted to human presence as part of the landscape. A new element, yet one that followed patterns. This distinction explains why cats never became fully dependent. Their survival did not hinge on human approval. It hinged on environmental alignment. Cats stayed because staying made sense. Opportunity extended beyond food. Settlements offered protection from larger predators. Human activity deterred threats unintentionally. Cats resting near these spaces encountered fewer dangers. This safety mattered, especially for younger cats. Kittens raised in these environments learned calm through exposure. Human sounds became background rather than alarm. Movement patterns became familiar. Familiarity softened vigilance without erasing it. Cats remained attentive. They remained cautious. They remained free to leave. Yet many did not, because opportunity continued. Rodent populations returned each season. Shelter remained. Warmth persisted. Consistency invites staying. Cats began to establish small territories overlapping human spaces, not inside them, alongside them. Edges again. These edge territories allowed cats to benefit without surrendering independence. They could approach when conditions felt right. They could withdraw easily. Choice stayed intact. Humans gradually became part of the environment cats observed. Their routines folded into the nightly map. Their presence influenced movement without direct engagement. Cats learned when doors closed, when fires dimmed, when silence returned. Their mind adjusted effortlessly. This quiet synchronization did not require trust. It required predictability. Trust would come later, slowly. For now, opportunity guided behavior. As you rest, imagine a cat sitting just beyond the reach of firelight. The ground still warm, the air calm, rodents stirring softly nearby. The cat remains still, breathing slow, awareness open. Nothing presses forward, nothing pulls away. This moment holds no attachment, only alignment. Cats did not step toward friendship, they stepped toward opportunity. And because that opportunity persisted night after night, staying became ordinary. This is how the relationship deepened without effort, through repeated, quiet choice. Cats noticed opportunity, they responded, they remained. And in doing so, they moved one step closer to the shared story that continues even now. As cats remained near early settlements, something subtle began to form. Two lives unfolding in the same place, without crossing too closely. Humans moved through their days with purpose. Work followed the sun. Fields were tended. Storage was checked. Voices and footsteps filled the daylight hours. Cats watched all of this from a distance. They did not join. They did not interfere. They adjusted. When human movement increased, cats grew still. When sound softened, cats emerged. The rhythm was simple. Day belonged to people. Night belonged to cats. This separation reduced friction. It allowed both species to exist without interruption. Cats learned the daily cycle quickly. Morning activity signaled retreat. Evening quiet invited movement. They timed themselves carefully, not from fear, but from awareness. Humans, meanwhile, rarely saw cats clearly. A shape at dusk, a movement near the edge of light, a presence felt more often than observed. This partial visibility mattered. It allowed familiarity to develop without scrutiny. Cats were known without being watched. Humans were sensed without being approached. Neither side felt pressured. This arrangement created mutual tolerance. Cats tolerated human presence because it followed patterns. Humans tolerated cats because they caused no disturbance. Nothing was asked of either side. Cats continued their nightly routines. They moved along walls. They paused near storage areas. They listened. Humans slept. This division of time allowed trust to remain undemanded. There was no expectation of closeness, no assumption of relationship, just shared space. Cats maintained independence by staying mostly unseen. Humans maintained comfort by allowing that invisibility. Over time, this coexistence became ordinary. The cat moving at night no longer startled. The absence of rodents felt normal. The quiet remained uninterrupted. These small details matter more than dramatic moments. Parallel lives reduce conflict. They allow adjustment without negotiation. Cats did not need to announce themselves. Humans did not need to respond. Silence carried the relationship forward. As generations passed, this rhythm deepened. Cats born near settlements inherited timing. They learned when stillness mattered. They learned when movement felt safe. Human children grew accustomed to occasional sightings. A cat slipping away, a shape disappearing behind a structure. No reaction followed. This lack of reaction reinforced calm. Cats learned that human presence did not require alarm. Humans learned that cats did not require attention. This balance preserved autonomy on both sides. Neither species dominated the other's time. Neither demanded change. Parallel lives do not merge quickly. They align slowly. Day and night created a natural boundary. It protected both. Cats could remain predators without conflict. Humans could remain focused without disruption. Over centuries, this pattern repeated. The same movements, the same timing, the same quiet acceptance. Repetition builds familiarity without forcing closeness. Cats grew accustomed to human sounds as background. Humans grew accustomed to feline presence as atmosphere. Neither required explanation. This is where many stories of companionship truly begin. Not with affection, not with touch, with tolerance. Tolerance allows space. Space allows calm. Calm allows choice. Cats stayed because nothing pushed them away. Humans allowed cats to remain because nothing went wrong. This is a gentle foundation. As you rest now, imagine a settlement settling into night. Voices fade. Firelight dims. A cat steps forward from shadow. No one reacts. Nothing changes. Two lives continue. Side by side. Unentangled. This parallel existence carried on for generations, quietly shaping comfort, softening edges. And from this steady rhythm, something more stable would soon emerge. The overlap between cats and humans did not happen everywhere at once. It emerged most clearly in a specific stretch of land, where conditions aligned gently over long periods of time. This region is known today as the Fertile Crescent. It curves through parts of what we now call the Middle East, following rivers, valleys, and plains that supported early agriculture. Here, water returned reliably, soil remained productive, seasons followed patterns that people could learn. Humans settled here because the land allowed it. Cats followed for the same reason. This region offered abundance without extremes. Temperatures shifted gradually. Rain arrived with some consistency. Grasses and grains matured predictably. Rodents thrived in this environment. Their populations rose and fell in familiar waves. Their behavior became patterned. Cats noticed. The Fertile Crescent became a place where repetition ruled daily life. Fields were tended season after season. Grain was stored year after year. Settlements endured rather than moving on. For cats, this endurance mattered more than size or structure. Staying power creates opportunity. Cats did not encounter novelty each night. They encountered familiarity. Paths repeated. Shelter remained. Prey returned. This allowed cats to establish stable territories without conflict. They did not need to compete aggressively. They did not need to roam far. They could remain. Humans, meanwhile, adapted to the land in ways that unintentionally supported cats. They shaped environments that rewarded predictability. They reduced larger predators through presence alone. They altered landscapes without eliminating wildness. The Fertile Crescent became a shared space through alignment rather than design. Cats did not belong to humans. Humans did not manage cats. Both belonged to the land. Seasonal abundance reinforced this arrangement. Harvest periods brought increased rodent activity. Cats responded naturally. Their presence eased pressure on stored food. When seasons shifted, cats adjusted again. They followed prey movements. They rested when activity slowed. Nothing required coordination. This cyclical rhythm repeated across centuries. Generation after generation experienced the same patterns, the same fields, the same shelters, the same quiet presence at night. Over long spans of time, behavior settles. Responses soften. Alarm fades. Cats born into these environments encountered humans as part of the background, rather than as intruders. Sounds of work, light from fires, movement at predictable times. These exposures shaped calm rather than attachment. Humans, in turn, grew accustomed to cats as part of the environment. Their presence blended into expectation. They were there. They always had been. The Fertile Crescent did not create companionship. It created continuity. Continuity allowed tolerance to deepen without effort. It allowed both species to relax into coexistence. This matters deeply for understanding what came later. Friendship does not appear suddenly. It grows in places where nothing disrupts staying. The Fertile Crescent offered that stability. It supported shared rhythms over extraordinary lengths of time. Centuries passed with little change to daily patterns. Cats continued their quiet work. Humans continued their routines. Neither species needed to redefine itself. This long, steady overlap shaped expectations on both sides. Cats learned that proximity did not equal threat. Humans learned that feline presence did not require control. Both learned that coexistence could remain uncomplicated. As you rest now, imagine the land itself holding this relationship. Wide fields under evening light, structures resting quietly, a cat moving along a familiar edge. Time passes slowly here. Seasons return. Nothing rushes forward. The Fertile Crescent did not mark a turning point through action. It provided a setting where patience could work. And in that patient landscape, the foundation for lasting companionship settled quietly into place. As cats remained near human settlements, their daily behavior continued unchanged. They hunted, they rested, they observed. Nothing about their actions was directed. Nothing was requested. Cats did what they had always done. Rodents followed grain and shelter. Cats followed rodents. The pattern held steady. This is important to sit with gently. Cats did not learn a new role. They fulfilled an existing one in a new setting. There was no instruction involved, no shaping of behavior, no expectation placed upon them. Hunting unfolded quietly, mostly unseen. Cats moved through storage areas at night. They paused near paths rodents used repeatedly. They waited. Their methods remained subtle. Stillness before motion. Motion followed by stillness again. These actions required no human awareness to be effective. Over time, humans noticed a difference. Stores suffered less loss. Disturbances became less frequent. The night felt calmer. This noticing did not arrive with celebration. It arrived as absence. Fewer sounds, fewer disruptions, fewer signs of damage. The benefit emerged through quiet reduction rather than visible effort. Cats did not present themselves as helpers. They did not signal success. They did not seek acknowledgement. They simply remained. Humans did not need to understand feline behavior to appreciate the outcome. They felt it in continuity. Food lasted longer. Sleep came easier. This mutual benefit formed without conversation. Cats were never assigned responsibility. They were never supervised. Their presence alone altered conditions. Because cats hunted independently, Their efforts adapted naturally. When rodent activity increased, cats responded. When it decreased, cats rested more. This flexibility mattered. It meant balance could maintain itself without intervention. Cats took only what sustained them. Rodent populations adjusted accordingly. There was no overcorrection, no collapse. The system regulated itself through instinct. Humans benefited because they did not interfere. They did not attempt to direct cats. They did not attempt to optimize behavior. They allowed the pattern to continue. This allowance preserved the relationship's simplicity. Cats retained autonomy. Humans retained comfort. Neither owed the other anything. This absence of obligation is central to understanding why cats remained. They were never trapped in exchange. They were never bound by expectation. They stayed because the environment continued to support them. Rodent control emerged as a side effect of presence rather than a goal. This distinction shaped everything that followed. When animals are valued only for utility, pressure follows. Pressure reshapes behavior. Behavior shifts under demand. That did not happen here. Cats were tolerated first. Benefit appeared second. Recognition followed slowly. Even then, recognition remained understated. Humans did not begin to manage cats actively. They did not confine them. They did not breed them selectively at this stage. They noticed calm and allowed it to continue. Cats, in turn, experienced fewer threats near settlements. Human activity deterred larger predators unintentionally. Shelter remained available. This mutual ease reinforced staying. Cats did not need to work harder. They did not need to perform. Their contribution came from being exactly what they already were. This dynamic explains why affection did not form immediately. There was no emotional exchange required. Help unfolded without closeness. That absence kept boundaries intact. Cats remained hunters. Humans remained observers. Yet something important was happening quietly. Repeated benefit builds tolerance. Tolerance builds familiarity. Familiarity reduces fear. Fear reduction changes perception. Humans began to see cats as part of the environment rather than intruders. Cats began to see human presence as neutral rather than threatening. This shift required no teaching. It occurred through repetition. Night after night. Season after season. As you rest now, imagine this pattern continuing undisturbed. Grain stored quietly, rodents moving cautiously, a cat waiting in stillness. No one watches, no one interferes. The benefit exists without display. This is how cooperation begins in nature. Through alignment rather than agreement. Through presence rather than performance. Cats did not become helpers by trying. They became helpers by remaining themselves. And because nothing demanded more from them, they stayed. This quiet exchange laid the groundwork for familiarity without attachment, for usefulness without obligation. It was a relationship shaped by absence. Absence of command. Absence of control. Absence of expectation. And in that absence, stability found room to grow. The quiet relationship between cats and humans continued, and one detail remained consistent across generations. No one tried to take control. Cats were not gathered. They were not enclosed. They were not shaped to fit a purpose. They remained where they were because remaining felt safe. This absence of domination shaped the entire relationship. Early human communities had the capacity to control animals when they needed to. They managed livestock. They protected stored food. They shaped environments deliberately. Yet with cats, something different unfolded. Cats did not require oversight. They did not disrupt routines. They did not challenge human activity, because nothing felt threatened. Nothing needed to be restrained. Cats moved freely through shared spaces. They approached when conditions felt right. They withdrew when attention increased. This freedom preserved balance. There was no early effort to breed cats selectively. No emphasis on size, choice, or obedience. No attempt to amplify traits. Cats reproduced naturally. Kittens grew where circumstances allowed. Those most comfortable near human presence tended to remain. This pattern did not involve preference or planning. It unfolded through environment alone. Cats that tolerated proximity stayed. Cats that preferred distance left. No correction followed. This absence of force allowed cats to retain their internal regulation. They did not develop heightened vigilance from confinement. They did not experience stress from expectation. Their nervous systems remained settled. Because cats were never compelled to stay, staying became meaningful. Presence remained voluntary. Voluntary presence changes perception on both sides. Humans observed that cats came and went freely. They noticed consistency without control. They noticed contribution without effort. This reinforced tolerance rather than ownership. Cats were allowed to exist as neighbors rather than possessions. This distinction matters deeply. When animals are dominated, their behavior shifts under pressure. Movement becomes reactive. Attention sharpens defensively. That tension did not define early cat-human interaction. Cats maintained calm because nothing challenged their autonomy. Humans benefited because calm produces stability. This arrangement also preserved the cat's identity as a predator. They continued to hunt independently. They continued to choose when to rest. Nothing about their role required submission. Cats did not look to humans for direction. They did not seek approval. They did not wait for cues. They acted according to internal rhythms. This independence allowed cats to remain emotionally neutral toward people. They neither feared nor depended. They simply acknowledged presence. Humans learned to respect this neutrality. There was no reward system, no punishment system, no hierarchy established. This lack of structure prevented conflict. Cats did not resist control because control was never imposed. Humans did not pursue control because it offered no advantage. This balance allowed coexistence to persist without escalation. Over time, this absence of domination created a stable emotional distance. Cats felt safe enough to rest nearby. Humans felt secure enough to allow it. Neither side crossed boundaries. This preserved choice. Choice supports trust. A cat that remains by choice communicates comfort without words. A human who allows that presence communicates safety without demand. This mutual signaling occurred quietly, without intention. As generations passed, this dynamic became normalized. Cats near settlements behaved predictably. Humans adjusted expectations accordingly. No one sought more. This is why cats never lost their ability to leave. Even today, a cat may wander and return without explanation. That behavior echoes its earliest relationship with humans. Staying has always been optional. As you rest now, imagine this freedom settling into place. A cat resting near a structure. No tether, no barrier. The cat remains because it wants to. The human sleeps because nothing feels threatened. This quiet agreement did not need words. It did not need enforcement. It held because it respected autonomy. This absence of domination allowed the relationship to deepen slowly, without distortion. It preserved balance. It preserved calm. And because nothing was taken from cats, they eventually offered something more. When something repeats without disruption, it begins to feel ordinary. And when something feels ordinary, it no longer demands attention. This is how tolerance slowly shifted into familiarity. Cats continued to appear at the edges of human settlements. They followed the same paths. They paused in the same places. They moved with the same quiet timing night after night. Humans noticed these repetitions without needing to study them. A shape passing at dusk, a presence near stored grain, a brief glimpse before sleep. Nothing alarming followed. Over time, these moments stopped registering as events. They became part of the background. This background presence mattered more than interaction ever could. Cats were not approached. They were not chased away. They were simply allowed to exist nearby. This allowance softened the emotional space between species. Fear depends on uncertainty. Familiarity reduces it. As cats remained visible without causing harm, human responses relaxed. Tension faded. Startled responses diminished. Cats noticed this shift as well. They observed that human movement followed patterns rather than threats. Voices rose and fell predictably. Footsteps followed known routes. This predictability allowed cats to adjust their own behavior gently. They no longer needed to retreat as far. They could pause longer before moving away. Distance shortened slightly, not through intention, through comfort. Cats did not seek closeness. They allowed proximity. This difference is subtle but important. Seeking implies need. Allowing implies safety. Cats resting near human structures began to do so more openly. They remained visible a little longer. They chose spots with warmth and shelter, rather than concealment alone. Humans noticed this shift quietly. A cat lying near a wall. A cat resting within sight. No reaction followed. This absence of reaction reinforced calm. Silence became shared. Shared silence carries trust without words. As this pattern repeated, both species adjusted internally. Humans no longer registered cats as outsiders. Cats no longer registered humans as disturbances. They occupied the same environment with relaxed awareness. This familiarity did not erase boundaries. Cats remained cautious. Humans remained uninvolved. Yet the emotional tone changed. The presence of cats began to signal stability rather than uncertainty. Rodents were fewer. The night felt quieter. The environment felt balanced. These associations mattered. When calm coincides with presence, presence becomes welcome. Cats did not claim space. They were permitted it. Humans did not invite cats closer. They accepted proximity. This mutual restraint preserved harmony. Over generations, Kittens born near settlements inherited this emotional neutrality. Human sounds were no longer startling. Movement no longer signaled threat. Cats learned early that humans were predictable elements of the landscape. Humans, in turn, grew accustomed to cats as part of daily rhythm. Their presence required no thought. Their absence might have felt noticeable. Familiarity had taken root. This stage of the relationship carried no affection yet. There was no touching, no naming, no bonding rituals. And that absence protected what was forming. Because nothing was demanded, nothing was resisted. Cats remained free to leave. Humans remained free to ignore. Yet both continued to coexist. This is how emotional distance narrows safely. Not by crossing it suddenly, by letting it shrink through comfort. As you rest now, imagine this shared quiet. A cat resting near a doorway, a human passing without pause. No exchange occurs, no meaning is assigned, and yet something has changed. The cat belongs to the place now. The human accepts that belonging without ownership. This is familiarity. It forms without announcement. It settles through repetition. It carries calm forward. Tolerance becomes familiarity when nothing goes wrong long enough. When silence remains peaceful. When presence feels expected. This shift did not require time measured in years. It required generations. And once familiarity settled in, staying no longer felt remarkable. It felt normal. And from normalcy, something even more stable would soon emerge. At some point, without ceremony or decision, staying stopped being a choice that needed reconsideration. It became the default. Cats remained near human settlements because nothing interrupted the pattern. Food sources stayed consistent. Shelter remained available. The emotional climate stayed calm. Leaving no longer offered advantage. This shift did not happen suddenly. It unfolded so slowly that it would have been impossible to mark the moment. One generation stayed. The next was born into staying. For cats, normalcy matters deeply. When an environment remains predictable, effort decreases. When effort decreases, stress softens. When stress softens, presence deepens. Cats resting near settlements no longer scan constantly for threat. They still notice movement. They still listen carefully. Yet vigilance no longer carried tension. This internal settling made staying easier. Humans, meanwhile, adjusted without conscious thought. Cats were no longer newcomers. They were part of the landscape. Their silhouettes at dusk felt familiar. Their movements at night felt expected. Their quiet presence blended into routine. No one questioned why cats were there. They simply were. This acceptance did not create ownership. It created allowance. Allowance carries a different emotional weight. Humans did not feed cats deliberately at first. They did not call them closer. They did not restrict their movement. They let cats exist alongside them. Cats responded by remaining visible without intrusion. They rested near warmth. They lingered near structures. They withdrew easily when activity increased. This mutual respect preserved balance. As staying became normal, subtle changes followed. Cats grew more relaxed in their posture. They rested longer in exposed spaces. They slept more deeply. These shifts reflected trust without attachment. Cats trusted the environment. They trusted predictability. They trusted that nothing would force change. Humans trusted that cats required nothing from them. They trusted that coexistence would remain uncomplicated. This simplicity mattered. When relationships grow without obligation, they remain stable. Nothing presses, nothing strains. Generations of cats lived their entire lives near people without crossing into dependency. They hunted, they rested, they reproduced. Their kittens encountered human presence early. Sounds of work, light at night, movement at dawn. These experiences shaped calm rather than fear. Kittens learned that humans were part of the world's background. They did not imprint emotionally. They acclimated. This acclimation mattered more than bonding ever could at this stage. It meant cats no longer evaluated human presence actively. They accepted it passively. Passive acceptance is powerful. It frees attention. It frees energy. Cats no longer needed to decide whether to stay each night. Staying required no decision. Humans no longer needed to consider cats as unusual. Their presence required no thought. This mutual ease marked a turning point. When staying becomes normal, the environment begins to feel shared, not owned, not controlled. Shared. Cats move through human spaces more confidently, not inside homes yet, but near them. Edges softened, distances shortened slightly. These changes happened without planning. They followed comfort. Humans noticed cats resting more openly. They noticed kittens playing nearby. They noticed calm. Nothing compelled action. And because nothing compelled action, stability deepened. Staying without demand created room for something new to form later. Not yet affection, not yet closeness, but readiness. Readiness for connection when conditions allowed it. As you rest now, imagine this quiet normalcy. A settlement settling into night. Cats resting near familiar places. Humans moving through routines without pause. No one watches closely. No one intervenes. Life continues. This is how companionship prepares itself. Not through intention, through repetition. Staying becomes normal when nothing pushes it away. When presence feels safe. When absence feels unnecessary. Cats stayed because they could. Humans allowed it because it worked. And in that long, unremarkable continuation, the foundation for friendship quietly set itself in place. No agreement was made, no boundary crossed, just staying. When an environment stays the same for long enough, behavior adjusts without effort. Nothing needs to be taught. Nothing needs to be reinforced. Living near humans began to shape cats in this quiet way. The change did not happen in instinct. Cats did not lose their hunting ability. They did not lose awareness. What changed was distance. Early on, cats kept wide space between themselves and people. Distance meant safety. Distance meant control. As human presence remained predictable, that distance softened. Cats no longer retreated at the first sound. They paused instead. They watched. This pause matters. Pausing reflects assessment rather than alarm. It reflects confidence in understanding the environment. Cats learned that human movement followed patterns. Footsteps came and went. Voices rose and settled. Gestures repeated themselves. Once patterns became familiar, response changed. Cats reduced their flight distance naturally. They allowed humans to pass closer before moving away. They lingered longer before retreating. This did not come from trust in individuals. It came from trust in predictability. Predictability calms the nervous system. Cats also began to watch humans more openly, not with expectation, with curiosity. Observation is different from engagement. Cats did not seek interaction. They gathered information. They watched hands move. They tracked routines. They learned when movement carried meaning and when it did not. This observational curiosity required calm. A cat in distress cannot observe deeply. A cat at ease can. Living near humans provided that ease over time. Body language adjusted subtly. Tails remained lower rather than rigid. Ears rotated rather than pinned. Postures softened without losing readiness. These shifts were small, yet they signaled internal change. Cats no longer held their bodies in constant defense. They allowed muscles to relax more often. They rested more openly. This openness did not mean vulnerability. It meant confidence. Cats remained aware. They remained capable of quick response. They simply no longer expected threat. Humans noticed these changes quietly. A cat resting instead of fleeing. A cat watching instead of disappearing. No reaction followed. This lack of reaction mattered. When animals adjust behavior without consequence, that behavior stabilizes. Cats learned that proximity did not trigger pursuit. They learned that being seen did not invite interference. Visibility became safe. This safety allowed new behaviors to appear. Cats rested in places with partial exposure. They chose warmth over concealment. They stayed nearby rather than withdrawing completely. These choices were practical. They reduced energy expenditure. They increased comfort. Comfort shapes behavior. Over generations, these small adjustments accumulated. Cats born into these environments inherited calm through experience rather than genetics. They learned early that human presence carried no urgency. Sounds became background. Movement became context. Fear responses softened. This did not erase caution. It refined it. Cats became more discerning. They reacted when necessary. They ignored what carried no consequence. This refinement made coexistence smoother. Humans moved freely without startling cats. Cats moved freely without disrupting humans. The environment supported both. This stage of emotional softening did not involve affection. There was no bonding yet. No attachment formed. Yet emotional space narrowed. Cats allowed humans closer without stress. Humans allowed cats to remain visible without concern. This mutual allowance reshaped behavior quietly. As you rest now, imagine a cat sitting near a path humans use daily. The cat watches. The human passes. Neither reacts. The cat remains. The human continues. This moment carries no meaning, and that is exactly why it matters. Behavior changes most deeply when no one is trying to change it. Living near humans altered cats gently, not by demand, by stability. Their bodies softened, their attention refined, their presence became easier. And from this ease, the next generation would begin their lives already comfortable in shared space. That is where the story moves next. When kittens are born into an environment, They do not compare it to anything else. They accept it as the shape of the world. For kittens born near human settlements, people were never newcomers. They were part of the background from the very beginning. These kittens opened their eyes to familiar sounds. Footsteps moving past, voices rising and falling, firelight shifting at night. None of this required interpretation. It was simply there. Early exposure matters because it shapes comfort without instruction. Kittens do not need to be taught safety when safety is consistent. Their nervous systems settle into what repeats. For these early cats, human presence repeated calmly. Mothers raised their kittens in spaces that already felt secure. Near warmth, near shelter, near predictable activity. The mother's calm guided the kitten's response. If she rested, they rested. If she observed without alarm, they learned observation. This transmission was quiet. No lessons were given. Behavior was absorbed through proximity. Kittens learned early that humans did not demand interaction. Hands passed nearby without reaching. Voices sounded without calling. This absence of pressure mattered deeply. When young animals are not pursued, their confidence grows naturally. They explore at their own pace. They approach when ready. These kittens did not imprint in the way fully dependent animals might. They did not bond through necessity. They acclimated through familiarity. This distinction shaped everything that followed. Acclimation allows independence to remain intact. Imprinting replaces it. Because kittens retained independence, they did not feel compelled to seek humans out. They allowed closeness when it felt comfortable. They withdrew easily when it did not. This balance preserved choice. As kittens grew, their play unfolded near human spaces. They chased insects along walls. They rested in sun-warmed corners. They watched movement from safe distances. Humans noticed them more often now. Small bodies moving lightly, quick bursts of play followed by rest. Still, nothing changed in response. No one intervened. No one claimed. This lack of ownership allowed kittens to mature without pressure. They learned that being seen did not require reaction. They learned that presence did not demand performance. Their mind absorbed this quietly. As they aged, these cats displayed lower baseline vigilance. They startled less. They recovered faster when startled. Recovery speed matters more than fear itself. A calm environment does not remove threat response. It shortens its duration. These cats returned to rest quickly. They did not remain tense. This quality allowed them to coexist more easily. They could share space without carrying stress forward. Humans benefited as well. Cats that remained calm were easier to tolerate. They did not disrupt routines. They did not demand attention. This mutual ease reinforced staying. Generations of kittens were born into this pattern. Each generation inherited an environment already shaped by calm. Behavior softened across time without selection or planning. Cats that thrived were those who remained relaxed. Those who preferred distance simply lived farther away. Nothing forced convergence. This stage marks an important shift. Cats raised near humans no longer evaluated proximity as novel. It felt normal. Normalcy lowers barriers. Yet even here, companionship had not fully formed. There was comfort, without attachment, familiarity without closeness. Cats still lived alongside humans rather than with them. But something subtle had changed. These cats no longer treated human presence as something to assess repeatedly. They treated it as part of the environment's texture, like wind, like light, like sound. This integration mattered. When presence no longer requires evaluation, energy frees itself. Attention softens. Rest deepens. Kittens raised near people carried this softness into adulthood. They sat longer. They lingered nearer. They watched quietly. Their bodies reflected ease. Their movements flowed rather than darted. This was not learned behavior. It was inherited experience. As you rest now, imagine a small group of kittens curled near a wall warmed by the day. Human voices drift nearby. No one approaches. The kittens sleep. They do not know this arrangement is unusual. They do not know it is new. For them, this is simply the world. And because it feels safe, it will shape them gently for life. This is how comfort settles across generations. Without instruction, without ownership, just by being there. When environments remain steady, they quietly shape who thrives within them. No force is required. No plan is made. Life adjusts through ease. As cats continued to live near human settlements, certain temperaments fit the rhythm better than others. Cats who startled less wasted less energy. Cats who recovered quickly returned to rest sooner. Cats who tolerated proximity conserved attention. This was not preference imposed from outside. It was alignment. Cats that remained calmer simply found the environment easier to live in. They rested more. They hunted efficiently. They raised kittens successfully. Cats who remained highly reactive tended to move farther away. They followed quieter spaces. They returned to more distant edges. Nothing was taken from them. Nothing pushed them out. They chose environments that matched their internal rhythms. This is how selection unfolded, quietly, without intervention. Aggression did not disappear through correction. It faded because it carried cost. A reactive cat expends energy quickly. It flees often. It scans constantly. In stable environments, that vigilance offered no advantage. It drained resources instead. Calmer cats conserved energy. They rested deeply. They responded only when needed. These cats were more likely to remain near consistent food sources and shelter. They were more likely to survive through seasons. They were more likely to raise offspring in the same spaces. Their kittens inherited the environment that supported calm. This is how traits persisted. Not because humans selected them, because the environment rewarded them. Quiet traits compounded across generations. Lower baseline tension, faster recovery after disturbance, greater tolerance for shared space. None of this erased instinct. Cats still hunted. They still defended boundaries when necessary. What changed was proportion. Calm responses became more common near human spaces. Aggressive responses became less frequent. This balance benefited both species. Cats experienced less internal strain. Humans experienced fewer disruptions. Stability reinforced itself. Importantly, this process never required dominance. No breeding decisions were made. No traits were enforced. Cats reproduced freely. Those best suited to the environment simply remained. This distinction explains why cats never became uniform. Variation persisted. Personalities differed. Some cats stayed closer. Some kept distance. Both patterns were acceptable. The environment did not demand sameness. It allowed fit. This allowed cats to retain individuality while still coexisting. Humans learned to accept this variation. Some cats appeared more often. Some remained unseen. No expectation followed. This lack of expectation preserved balance. Over time, calm presence became the most visible form of success near settlements. Cats that moved quietly were noticed less. Cats that rested openly were tolerated more. Tolerance feeds calm. Calm feeds tolerance. This feedback loop deepened without anyone naming it. As you rest now, imagine this gentle sorting taking place across generations. Not through conflict, through comfort. Cats who felt at ease stayed. Cats who felt unsettled left. No one judged. No one intervened. The environment held the answer. This process did not create obedience. It created confidence. Calmer cats did not submit. They trusted their understanding of the world. They knew when movement mattered. They knew when rest was safe. This confidence allowed them to remain visible without tension. Visibility invited familiarity. Familiarity invited acceptance. And slowly, quietly, a population of cats emerged that could share space with humans without strain. Not because they were changed, because they were supported. This is selection through calm, a process that leaves no record of force, no moment of decision, only the quiet persistence of those who fit. And from this calm foundation, something new would soon appear. Not utility, not tolerance, but the earliest signs of companionship. Companionship did not arrive with invitation. It appeared as a soft shift in distance. Cats that had grown comfortable near humans began to choose proximity more often. Not contact, just nearness. They sat where people rested. They paused near warmth that radiated from bodies or fires. They lingered within view rather than at the edge of sight. These choices carried no request. They carried no expectation. They reflected comfort. A cat sitting nearby does not seek attention. It acknowledges safety. This distinction matters. Early signs of companionship appeared as shared space rather than shared action. Cats rested while humans worked. Humans moved while cats remained. Neither adjusted behavior for the other. Yet something had shifted. Cats began to sleep closer to warmth consistently. Near hearths, near sunlit stones, near places where human presence left lingering heat. Warmth invited rest. Rest invited vulnerability. Choosing to rest nearby signaled trust in the environment rather than in individuals. Cats trusted predictability. They trusted that nothing would disturb them while they slept. This trust extended gradually to human presence. Cats also watched more openly. They followed human movement with their eyes rather than withdrawing. They tracked activity without tension. Watching without demand is a form of presence. It reflects interest without need. Humans notice this quiet attention. A cat observing rather than fleeing. A cat remaining rather than disappearing. Still, nothing changed in response. No one reached out. no unclaimed closeness. This restraint preserved the balance forming. Companionship grows best when space remains intact. Cats maintained autonomy. They could leave at any moment. They often did. But they returned. Return matters more than arrival. A cat that leaves and comes back communicates comfort through choice. Presence becomes voluntary rather than habitual. Over time, these returns created rhythm. Cats appeared at similar times. They rested in familiar spots. Humans learned these patterns unconsciously. They stepped around resting bodies. They adjusted movement without thought. This adjustment signaled acceptance. Shared space became cooperative without communication. Cats did not seek interaction. They allowed coexistence. This allowance softened emotional boundaries. Kittens raised in this environment observed these patterns. They watched adults rest near humans without consequence. They learned that proximity did not disrupt safety. This learning passed forward. The first signs of companionship did not involve affection. They involved trust through stillness, sitting nearby, sleeping close, watching quietly. These behaviors required calm nervous systems. They required environments free of pressure. They reflected readiness rather than attachment. Humans responded with continued non-interference. They allowed cats to remain where they chose. They respected distance. This mutual respect stabilized companionship before it was named. No roles were defined, no expectations set. Cats did not become pets. Humans did not become caretakers. They shared space. As you rest now, imagine a quiet evening in one of these early settlements. A fire glows softly. A cat settles near its warmth. A human moves nearby without pause. No eye contact occurs. No touch is exchanged. Yet something has formed. Presence without demand. Comfort without possession. This is companionship at its earliest stage. It does not seek closeness. It allows it. Cats did not move toward humans because they needed them. They moved toward comfort. Humans happened to be part of that comfort. This subtle distinction preserved balance. Companionship grew as a byproduct of shared calm rather than desire. And because it grew this way, it did not threaten independence. Cats remained predators. Humans remained observers. Yet they now rested in the same spaces. This quiet closeness prepared the relationship for everything that would come next. Not through change, through continued presence. And in that presence, friendship found its first shape. As companionship settled into place, one thing remained unchanged. Cats stayed cats. They did not surrender their instincts. They did not trade independence for comfort. They did not reshape themselves to fit human expectation. This is why the relationship endured. Cats retained their hunting skills even as they lived near people. They continued to stalk. They continued to practice through play. They continued to move with precision. Hunting was never removed from their lives. It remained part of how they understood the world. This mattered because it preserved balance inside the cat. A predator that cannot express instinct carries tension. Cats never reached that state. Even when food became more available, cats still hunted. Not out of hunger alone, out of rhythm. Hunting regulated their bodies and their mind. It provided focus. It released energy. Because this instinct remained intact, cats did not depend emotionally on humans for stimulation or structure. They could regulate themselves. Solitary comfort also remained. Cats never required constant presence. They did not seek reassurance through crowds or hierarchy. They rested alone easily. They occupied space without needing interaction. This comfort with solitude allowed cats to live alongside humans without becoming overwhelmed. They could withdraw when needed. They could return when ready. Independence preserved choice. Choice preserved calm. Cats were never asked to obey. They were never expected to perform. They were never measured by compliance. This absence protected their nervous systems. Animals shaped through obedience often live in heightened states of attention, always waiting for cues. Cats did not live this way. They responded to the environment rather than instruction. They moved when movement made sense. They rested when rest was available. This autonomy made companionship sustainable. Humans did not need to manage cats actively. Cats did not need to anticipate human demands. The relationship stayed light. Because cats remained capable hunters, they also remained capable of leaving. They could survive away from human spaces. They could return without dependence. This ability to leave mattered deeply. A relationship built on inability to leave carries pressure. A relationship built on choice carries ease. Cats stayed because staying felt right, not because leaving felt impossible. This distinction shaped how humans perceived them as well. Cats were not tools. They were not servants. They were neighbors who happened to share space. Over generations, this understanding settled into culture quietly. Cats were respected for their nature rather than reshaped. Stories formed around their independence. Their unpredictability became accepted. Their boundaries became normal. This acceptance prevented escalation. Humans did not push cats into roles they could not sustain. Cats did not resist demands that were never made. This equilibrium explains why cats appear unchanged even today. A modern cat still hunts shadows, still chooses solitude, still approaches on its own terms. The ancient balance remains. As you rest now, imagine a cat resting alone near a window. The room is quiet. No one watches. The cat is content. That contentment comes from self-sufficiency rather than attention, from internal regulation rather than external structure. Cats were never fully domesticated because they never needed to be. Their presence aligned naturally with human life without transformation. They retained their identity while sharing space. This preservation allowed the relationship to deepen without distortion. Friendship formed without obedience. Closeness formed without control. And because cats stayed themselves, they could remain with us without losing balance. This is not a failure of domestication. It is the success of coexistence. Cats did not change who they were. They brought who they were into shared space. And that is why the relationship still feels effortless today. As cats continued to share space with humans, their relationship followed a path that looked unlike anything else humans had experienced before. There was closeness, but no submission. There was familiarity, but no obedience. There was presence, but no requirement. This difference shaped everything. Most animals that lived near humans did so through structure. Roles formed. Expectations followed. Behavior was guided through repetition and response. Cats moved differently through shared space. They approached humans without waiting for permission. They withdrew without explanation. They returned without obligation. Their behavior did not organize itself around approval. It organized itself around comfort. This is why emotional proximity with cats never required submission. Cats did not place humans above themselves in a hierarchy. They did not look for direction. They did not orient their actions around reward. Instead, they responded to environment. If a space felt calm, they stayed. If it felt busy, they moved away. If warmth appeared, they rested nearby. If noise increased, they adjusted. Choice remained at the center of every interaction. This foundation of choice created a different kind of closeness, one that could exist without control. Cats did not need to be commanded to remain. They chose to. That choice carried meaning. A cat sitting near a human without being asked communicates comfort through presence alone. There is no performance, no effort to please, just being. This is why affection with cats feels quiet. It does not announce itself. It reveals itself through consistency. Over time, humans learn to recognize this language. They noticed that cats returned to familiar places. They rested near familiar people. They observed without demanding attention. These patterns carried emotional weight without overt expression. Cats remained emotionally close without losing autonomy. They did not surrender independence to belong. They brought independence with them. This distinction explains why cats retained their solitary comfort. They could rest alone without distress. They could be present without interaction. This made closeness sustainable. Animals that require constant engagement place pressure on shared space. Cats did not. They entered human environments lightly. They exited just as easily. Because of this, humans adjusted in response. They learned to allow space. They learned to wait for approach rather than initiate. This mutual adjustment preserved balance. Over generations, cats living alongside humans developed patterns of emotional regulation that fit shared environments. They did not escalate quickly. They recovered quickly. They expressed comfort through proximity rather than touch. This emotional style remained consistent across cultures and time. Whether cats lived near farms, homes, or streets, their approach stayed the same. Presence by choice. Modern cats, known today as Felis catus, still reflect this history clearly. They live among humans without being governed by them. They share space without surrendering identity. A modern cat may accept affection briefly, then move away. It may sleep nearby without engaging. It may watch quietly for long periods. These behaviors confuse those expecting submission, yet they make perfect sense within this lineage. Cats never learned closeness through control. They learned it through safety. Safety allows choice. Choice allows trust. This structure-free relationship explains why cats never needed strict boundaries to remain. They regulate distance naturally. They approach when comfortable. They retreat when overwhelmed. Humans gradually learn to read these signals. They recognize that closeness could not be demanded. It could only be offered space. This understanding preserved companionship without distortion. As you rest now, imagine a cat resting near someone without touching them. The cat is relaxed. The human is still. No one reaches. No one moves. This moment contains emotional proximity without submission, comfort without control. This is what made cats different, and this difference allowed the relationship to endure. Cats did not become companions by surrendering themselves. They became companions by staying themselves. They did not obey to belong. They belonged because they chose to. And because that choice remained intact, the bond could remain gentle, flexible, and enduring. This is why cats still feel like guests in our lives rather than possessions. They arrive, they stay, they leave, they return, always on their own terms. And that is exactly why they remain close. As cats and humans maintained the same space, affection began to appear in a form that felt unfamiliar. It did not arrive as attachment. It did not arrive as dependency. It arrived as comfort expressed through choice. Cats did not learn affection as something to give or receive on command. They learned it as a state they entered when conditions felt right. This is why affection with cats has always looked quiet. A cat chooses proximity before touch. It sits nearby before moving closer. It shares space before sharing contact. These steps are not hesitation. They are regulation. Cats regulate their nervous systems through distance. They move closer when calm deepens. They move away when stimulation rises. Affection follows this internal rhythm. When cats rested near humans, they did not seek reassurance. They signaled ease. They allowed presence. This allowance carried meaning without expectation. Humans slowly learned to recognize this language. A cat choosing to sit near someone did not ask for interaction. It offered trust. Trust without obligation feels different from attachment. It does not demand maintenance. It does not punish absence. Cats retain the ability to withdraw at any moment. That withdrawal did not erase affection. It protected it. Affection that allows retreat remains stable. Affection that traps becomes strained. This balance shaped how touch emerged. Cats accepted contact only when their bodies were ready. They leaned in briefly. They rubbed lightly. They moved away easily. Touch occurred on cat terms. This did not limit closeness. It preserved it. Because touch was never forced, it retained its value. Each moment of contact remained intentional. Each interaction remained regulated. Cats used affection as a way to maintain internal balance. Gentle contact released tension. Proximity supported calm. They did not use affection to seek approval or security. They used it to stay regulated. Humans adapted in response. They learned to pause rather than reach. They learned to wait rather than pursue. They learned to read posture rather than demand closeness. This adjustment allowed affection to deepen without pressure. Over generations, this pattern solidified. Cats express comfort through sitting near legs, lying close to warmth, or brushing past gently. They did not linger when overstimulated. They did not remain when attention felt too intense. This self-regulation kept interactions short and calm. Humans came to understand that affection with cats did not need to be constant to be real. Presence mattered more than duration. Choice mattered more than frequency. This understanding prevented escalation. Cats never became emotionally burdened by human expectation. They never carried the weight of meeting needs beyond their capacity. Because of this, affection remained light. Cats could offer closeness without losing independence. Humans could receive affection without claiming ownership. This mutual respect preserved the relationship's ease. Affection without obligation allowed cats to remain emotionally intact. They did not suppress instincts. They did not abandon solitude. They added closeness to their lives without replacing self-sufficiency. As you rest now, imagine a cat sitting quietly nearby. No movement occurs. No contact is made. Yet the space feels settled. That is affection without obligation, comfort without demand, presence without pressure. Cats taught humans that closeness does not need intensity. It does not need permanence. It does not need control. It only needs safety. This style of affection remains one of the most distinctive features of the cat-human relationship. It does not overwhelm. It does not insist. It appears briefly. It fades gently. It returns when ready. And because it arrives freely, it carries trust within it. Affection that chooses itself remains intact. Affection that allows space endures. Cats did not give affection to bind themselves to humans. They gave it to share calm. And because that calm never demanded more, affection remained part of the relationship without becoming its burden. This is how cats learn to love without obligation. As affection settled into the relationship without obligation, space itself began to change. Not suddenly, not deliberately. Homes slowly became shared territory. Cats did not enter human spaces through invitation. They drifted inward as comfort expanded. They followed warmth. They followed quiet. At first, this closeness stayed near thresholds, doorways, walls warmed by the sun, edges where inside and outside met. Edges felt familiar. From there, movement continued gently. Cats rested near hearths. They paused near sleeping areas. They explored when the house was still. Humans did not guide this process. They allowed it. Allowance shaped the home more than intention ever could. Cats did not take over human spaces. They integrated into them. They chose high places where observation felt safe. They chose corners where rest felt undisturbed. They chose paths that avoided disruption. Their presence adapted to the home's rhythm rather than altering it. Humans adjusted in response without effort. They stepped around resting bodies. They left doors partially open. They accepted fur as part of the environment. Homes softened. This softening did not remove structure. It layered calm into it. Cats treated houses as territories without ownership. They did not patrol aggressively. They did not defend space through dominance. They marked familiarity through routine, through returning, through resting. A cat sleeping in the same place night after night communicates belonging without possession. Humans learned to read this quietly. They noticed preferred spots. They adjusted furniture. They adapted habits. Homes changed shape slowly around feline presence, not through redesign, through accommodation. Cats retained autonomy within these spaces. They entered rooms freely. They left just as freely. They did not remain where stimulation rose. They did not linger where tension appeared. Their movement regulated the environment. Quiet spaces remained quiet. Active spaces remained flexible. This regulation benefited humans as well. Cats sleeping during the day reinforced stillness. Cats moving at night followed familiar paths. Their rhythms intertwined without conflict. Homes became places where different needs could coexist. Solitude and presence, movement and rest. Cats did not demand attention within the home. They accepted it when offered gently. They withdrew when needed. This preserved balance. Humans did not expect constant interaction. They learned to coexist rather than engage. Shared territory does not require constant contact. It requires respect for rhythm. Over generations, this arrangement became natural. Cats were no longer visitors. They were inhabitants. Yet they remained distinct. A cat in a home still behaves as a cat. It chooses vantage points. It seeks warmth. It maintains personal space. The house does not erase instinct. It provides context. This is why homes feel different with cats present. Not busier, quieter. Cats bring pause into shared space. They occupy without filling. They rest without requesting. Their presence encourages stillness. As you rest now, imagine a quiet house at night. Lights dim, sounds softened. A cat lies somewhere nearby, perhaps unseen, perhaps visible. Nothing happens, and that nothing feels complete. This is the final shape of shared territory. Not ownership, not control, coexistence. Cats integrated into human homes without surrendering themselves. Humans adapted their spaces without restructuring their lives. The house became a place where two species could rest without demand. This shared territory did not need rules to function. It followed comfort. It followed rhythm. And because it did, it endured. Cats did not become objects within homes. They became part of the atmosphere. Quiet, present, free. This is how the house became a shared space, and how friendship continued without obedience. Even as cats became familiar presences in human spaces, one truth never faded. They remained predators. This did not soften. It did not disappear. It did not need to. Cats continued to hunt even when food was available. They practiced through play. They tracked movement instinctively. They responded to sound with precision. These behaviors were not leftovers from the past. They were active expressions of balance. A predator that cannot express instinct carries tension. Cats never carried that tension. They remained alert beneath their rest. They slept deeply, yet woke quickly. Their bodies stayed tuned to movement and stillness equally. This balance allowed cats to share space without losing identity. A cat sleeping nearby is not surrendered. It is resting between moments of awareness. This is why cats can appear so peaceful while remaining capable. Their calm does not come from dependence. It comes from internal regulation. Humans often misinterpret this stillness. It can look passive. It can look soft. Yet beneath it, the predator remains intact. Cats do not switch identities when they enter homes. They carry their full nature with them. This continuity matters. A cat that retains its instincts does not feel trapped by closeness. It does not lose itself through companionship. It rests because resting feels safe. That safety is environmental rather than emotional. Cats do not need reassurance to sleep nearby. They need predictability. They need absence of threat. Human spaces offered that over time. This is why cats could lie near people without becoming dependent. They trusted the environment. They trusted rhythm. They did not attach their sense of safety to individuals. They attached it to conditions. This distinction preserved their autonomy. A cat sleeping beside a human is not seeking protection. It is acknowledging calm. This acknowledgement goes both ways. Humans learn to interpret feline rest as presence rather than vulnerability. They learn to move quietly. They learn to share space without intrusion. This mutual adjustment preserved peace. Cats retained their night rhythms even while living indoors. They moved when the house slept. They watched when activity slowed. Their internal clocks remained intact. This preserved their identity as creatures of dusk and dawn. They did not shift fully into human time. They overlapped it. Overlap allowed coexistence. The predator resting nearby also served as a reminder. Cats were never owned. They were never shaped. They remained capable of surviving without human presence. They remained able to leave. This ability to leave sustained trust. A presence that can leave but chooses to stay feels different. It carries weight without pressure. Cats sleeping beside humans communicate comfort without dependence. They remain who they are. This is why the relationship feels balanced rather than consuming. Cats do not lean emotionally. They do not demand constant exchange. They bring themselves into shared space without needing it to define them. As you rest now, imagine a cat sleeping nearby. Breathing slow, muscles loose. At any moment, the cat could wake. It could move. It could leave. Yet it does not. That stillness contains choice. This is the predator that sleeps beside us. Not tamed, not diminished, integrated. Cats never stopped being hunters. They simply learned where rest could deepen without risk. They did not trade instinct for friendship. They carried instinct into it. And because they did, the relationship remained light, resilient, and enduring. The predator stayed whole. The companion emerged quietly. Both remain present, even now. And this is where the story gently loosens its grip. There was no moment when cats stopped being predators. There was no moment when they decided to become companions. There was no agreement made, no line crossed. They stayed. They stayed near warmth. They stayed near quiet. They stayed near rhythms that felt safe. Over many years, that staying softened into familiarity. Familiarity opened space for comfort. Comfort allowed closeness. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was forced. Cats did not change who they were to belong beside us. They brought who they were into shared space. And humans learned slowly how to make room for that. This is why the relationship still feels different today. It carries choice rather than obligation, presence rather than performance, calm rather than control. A cat resting nearby is not making a promise. It is acknowledging peace. As you settle now, you might notice how this story mirrors rest itself. Nothing needs to be resolved. Nothing needs to be explained further. The predator still sleeps. The companion remains nearby. Both exist at once. And in that quiet overlap, there is nothing left to do. Thank you for spending this time with Cats for Sleep. Wherever you're listening from tonight, may the calm you've shared here carry gently forward. There's no need to stay awake for the ending. The story can rest now.